We've all seen this happen. A high-performing employee, someone who used to be the engine of the team, suddenly stalls out. They seem disengaged or frustrated, but lacking a specific framework to explain why, managers often default to labels, calling the person difficult. Traditional personality tests usually try to squeeze people into one of 4 boxes, but modern behavioral assessments function more like a mixing board. The grid stretches out into a series of independent dials that can be adjusted to capture a much more granular picture of how we work. These sliders don't measure a person's character or their sense of purpose. Instead, they map specific behavioral preferences across several scales, like how much autonomy they need or how they relate to risk, creating a staggered pattern unique to that individual. Think of this profile as a cheat sheet. It translates the internal frustrations an employee might not be able to articulate into objective vocabulary that a manager can actually act on. When a manager has this vocabulary, they can move past the symptoms of a difficult employee and begin to diagnose the hidden mismatches causing the friction in the first place. We examine 5 behavioral dials. Autonomy versus conformity measures independent drive. Social orientation tracks energizing engagement. Patience with process balances accuracy against speed. Ingenuity versus logic separates creative thinkers from optimizers. Energy level tracks visible pacing. Together, these form an employee's natural behavioral baseline. While that baseline pattern is relatively stable, success isn't. An employee's performance is almost entirely dependent on fit, how well their natural default matches the specific demands of the environment you've put them in. Imagine 3 high-performing people on your team are all unhappy. Even though they're in the same department, the solution for one could actually make things worse for the others. Maria is high on autonomy, but has very low patience for process. She's frustrated because a new corporate workflow requires 4 separate sign-offs for every tiny decision. She doesn't feel incompetent, she feels trapped by the speed of the system. James has a high social orientation and a high preference for process. He's struggling because the team stopped doing daily check-ins. Without those structured touchpoints to connect with his colleagues, he feels isolated and adrift. And Priya is high on logic, but low on social energy. She's overwhelmed because the team moved to an open office layout with mandatory brainstorming hours. She isn't being antisocial, she just can't find the quiet space she needs to think. Solving these problems doesn't require these people to change who they are. It requires adjusting the architecture around them. By fast-tracking Maria's approvals, restoring James's check-ins, or giving Priya quiet focus time, you restore the fit between the person and the role. It is tempting to look at a perfect profile and assume it guarantees success, but that is a mistake. These tools measure how someone operates, not how well they do it. A high score in autonomy doesn't matter if the person lacks the skills to actually do the job. Because preference and competence are not the same thing, these assessments should never be used as a blunt tool to screen out candidates during the hiring process. The most harmful misuse is treating a profile like destiny. A manager might see a low score in social orientation and use it as a permanent justification to stop offering that person collaborative leadership roles. They use the tool to close doors rather than open them. Real behavioral intelligence uses the profile as a starting point for curiosity, not a final verdict. You have to actually talk to the person and ask, "This is what the data says. Does this match your experience?" When used as a bridge for conversation rather than a label, multidimensional assessments become a powerful asset. They help thoughtful managers build the kind of customized environments where a team's natural wiring becomes their greatest strength.